Okay guys, and welcome to this week's video featuring me, Bosscinerator, talking about something that I usually don't mention or even make a topic of my channel. But I think it's important to state otherwise because of the importance of the topic. Now, I am definitely not making this video to say and to paint myself as a person who watches anime all the time. You know, I'm definitely not one of those people who have, working knowledge of 50 different anime series and I've watched, 5,000 anime episodes. I'm definitely not that person. What I am is a person who watched Naruto when he was a teenager and got really into it, and that led me to conclude that there are 3 big animes. Well, technically 4, but, fuck Dragon Ball in every one of its iterations. I fucking hate that series. There's 3 big animes from where I'm thinking. Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. And I've watched Naruto, and I've watched everything about that, and that turned me on to One Piece, and I've watched a lot of that. I've only got less than 100 episodes left before I hit the end of the actual anime and have to start reading the manga. Ooh. But the reason I made this video is because I'm such a huge fan of the original Naruto. Because the original Naruto was a very fun show. It's very underdog based, and all the characters have to overcome odds that are astronomical because, they're freaking like 12 years old. And they have to overcome things, and, the battles are really fun. And they kind of serve a lot of points too. They're really good characters. It's very character based. And seeing them interact and fight and overcome things, especially Naruto, because everyone thinks that he's an idiot. Well, obviously he's the main character, so he's got to be treated as the shit finger. Everyone shits on him, but at the end of the anime, he's definitely come a lot his way. And then we get to Naruto Shippuden. Naruto Shippuden, for people who don't know, is the continuation of the Naruto anime after a time skip of 2 or 3 years. I kind of forget what it is specifically. Where Naruto has gone off to train, and now he's coming back to fight bigger threats, like the Akatsuki, and this shadowy guy called Tobi, and Orochimaru, and Sasuke, and all these bigger threats, okay? It's definitely a step above what the original Naruto was, where the biggest threat was the Orochimaru plot to take over the Leaf Village. That was the biggest threat in that anime. But here we're talking world domination and, giant godly powered plots. Okay, that's what we're kind of getting in. And this is definitely a place it could have gone if it retained, the tone, the plot line, the characters of the original anime. Shippuden doesn't retain an awful lot. Just for starters, Naruto Part 1 was a very comedic anime, and it knew to get serious when it needed to. But, it's still very light, it's still very colorful, and, that's very appealing, because that kind of juxtaposition gives it a lot more weight. Shippuden is a very serious anime, where things have gotten very difficult, very more dangerous, and it's more difficult to deal with. And at the points where Shippuden tries to be comedic, it feels more obligatory than anything. It feels more like an obligation to pretend to be more like the original rather than what it's trying to be. And it definitely wasn't a good sign for Shippuden's quality when, well, first of all, it's my fault. I first watched Shippuden on Disney XD, and you do not want to watch an anime of anything on a Disney channel. At a Disney distribution, because they don't know how to deal with it. They have to censor the blood, they have to censor the language, they have to add additional things that make it kind of all around shittier to watch. It wasn't a good sign overall, though, that the first arc in the first story that they tried to tell in Shippuden is 50 episodes long. Okay, it's too long of a first arc, and they include a lot of stupid bullshit. Like, throughout the 50 episodes, they cut back to Tamari, who's not doing anything and not adding anything to the plot other than being a deliverer of omens that, don't actually mean anything other than it's script bullshit that she would ever know that bad things were actually happening. It's supernatural, Star Wars-esque bullshit what Tamari witnesses. And then there's the other thing, where Team Guy is being cut between all the action, and they're fighting clones of themselves and they don't actually do anything for a lot of episodes within that fight. You know, it's very boring, and it doesn't add anything to the story they're trying to tell. So it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be there adding excess runtime to a arc, to a story that's already run its course a very long time ago. I mean, it was important to tell that story because it's important to establish that the Akatsuki are a threat. You know, it's what their plan is, and it's what the anime is concerned about through the entire 450 episode run. At the point of speaking, that's how many episodes are in the anime. But it has too many stories interconnected that don't matter to anything. And that's Shippuden's biggest problem. Shippuden is an anime that spends too much of its runtime on stupid bullshit that doesn't matter. I would bet that 30% of the total anime's runtime is devoted to flashbacks. Shippuden has a ton of flashbacks in it, and flashbacks are useful in story writing when they actually add in new information or new context. That's what One Piece has been able to do. One Piece uses flashbacks to actually add things, and to actually, you know, add some punch to the plot where it needs to be. Shippuden uses flashbacks all the time for things that do not need to be restated. A lot of flashbacks in Shippuden are just done to re-establish things we already know, okay? We don't need to be retold what Itachi has done in his village when he was there. We don't need to re-establish the friendship and the weight that Naruto and Gaara have towards each other. We don't need an entire flashback restating, you know, why Sasuke left the village for 3 times, okay? I would bet that Shippuden is second only to Harry Potter for how much runtime they've got now of just reusing old material. It's insane how many times the series replays the same fucking footage, okay? It's ridiculous. And I mean, it is important to use flashbacks for something. I mean, later on when we're establishing the, God, I'm forgetting names, the founding of the Leaf Village, that was important to establish. I mean, it could have been cut down a little more, and I think that's a point I can make towards all of Shippuden. It could be cut down a lot. Shippuden should have had an editor go in there and cut a lot of things out, because a lot of it is not fun and it's really boring. And Shippuden's also suffering from, you know, a symptom of a show or a series, you know, finally hitting its stride and thinking that it has to do, you know, world domination plots, things that encompass a larger scope. And what I mean by that is that they're trying to draw out new context from things. What they're trying to do in Shippuden is that they retcon a lot of stuff. What they do in Shippuden is they retcon a lot of things. And the most egregious retcon that they do is, you know, try to establish that what Itachi did in the first Naruto, which established him as a total villain and a complete asshole because of obvious reasons, that he had a soft side to him, that what he did was, you know, well-intentioned and actually served a purpose to the larger plot. Itachi's truth is bullshit. Okay, it is a bullshit story and a really, really stupid retcon that they put in that fucking story. Only done so to basically do what the Star Wars prequel does. It's there solely to set up a larger plot, okay? And it's done very badly, because it really does come out of complete nowhere, the Itachi's truth arc. What the recontextualization, the retconning of the Itachi murders from the first anime. Because it comes out of nowhere, and it's completely unbelievable. Especially when the anime goes back to the moment where Itachi actually kills his parents, and their parents have accepted that their child is going to murder him, and they think it's okay. That is not a good thing to do, okay? That is a very not good thing to do, because establishing that Itachi felt bad about murdering an entire clan, which is exactly what he did, okay, for people who don't know. He murders his entire clan very early in the first anime, seemingly out of nowhere and for no reason. Now, it establishes that Itachi is an asshole, and it gives a goal to Sasuke to work towards, to kill, to to get revenge, okay? His entire life is a revenge plot, which drives a lot of the anime, because a lot of it is Sasuke based. Establishing him as the nicest possible guy after the fact is very stupid and kind of insulting, because it comes out of nowhere. It wasn't established at all until when it was put into the series itself, and that's why it's one of the worst parts of Shippuden. You know, it needs to be there because they need to set up a larger plot with Obito and Toby and Madara and, you know, everything else about the whole world domination plot that they've already done with the Akatsuki. And another major issue of Naruto Shippuden is that it's falling into that usual Japanese trope of God particle bullshit, God power bullshit, where the series, because it's been running so long and because it needs to keep driving up the threat and the amount of power that can be thrown at enemies, they need to start giving new and unprecedented powers to the main character so that they're able to confront the larger and larger threats until they hit that point where they have to fight God. Okay? That's what makes Shippuden not as fun of an anime, because like I've said, the original Naruto anime, a lot of why it was fun is because they needed to overcome things with the power level that they had. They had to overcome big threats with underdog at the underdog level. Sasuke, Naruto were not, you know, great powerhouses. They, you know, all of the characters were very young, were very limited in what they could do. But now that we've hit Shippuden levels, you know, Naruto has been given access to, you know, new levels of power with superpowers that we've never heard of before. He has to be trained in them very quickly, and he's able to do that. And it gives him new powers that means that no one in the anime can really touch his level other than the ultimate antagonist. Everyone else can be completely forgotten. And this isn't fun to watch in almost any case, and it's the main reason why I hate Dragon Ball as an anime, as a series, as a concept, because it is God particle bullshit, the series. When characters get this high power level and there's seemingly any solution to any problem, it's not fun and it's not interesting. Mostly because in the Shippuden case, we don't actually know what his power is. When a character keeps getting random ass pull superpowers, we don't know what his powers are. This is why, you know, every movie that's done a Superman action sequence with another villain is not interesting, because we don't know what his powers are. They're able to pull anything they want out of his ass, and this gets incredibly egregious and incredibly stupid at the end of the anime when Naruto and Sasuke are revived by literally God, okay? It's literally God, and he's given them God powers, okay? At that point, they can literally do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter, because we don't know what their powers are. We're just told that they've been inherited powers from some long ago ancestor Superman type person, okay? We don't know what they can do, because we've never been shown that and it's never been explained, okay? They have the power at that point to beat whatever they're put up against. And that's why it's not interesting. It's not interesting when we don't know what they're capable of, okay? And that's the reason why I stopped watching the anime around the introduction of Kaguya, because it didn't matter anymore, okay? We knew what the conclusion was. There's no interest to anything anymore. And the prospect of Naruto fighting Sasuke is doubly pointless, because what is the point of watching a battle between two people who have unexplained superpowers, okay? It's a battle of ass pulls, and that's not interesting. That's not interesting. Honestly, I would rather watch the Naruto Neji fight 17 times in a row before I was subjected to something as stupid as that. Shippuden is a very badly explained and honestly badly written anime. It takes what I loved about the original anime and completely shits all over it, and does so in an attempt to show that Naruto has grown up, shown that Naruto has matured and become the hero of the story. But when you start bringing in things like calling him the prophecy child and putting in a prophecy, that's not interesting. That's not very fun, okay? I didn't watch the people didn't watch the original anime because they thought Naruto was the chosen one, okay? There was no fucking, there wasn't no lead into this. It was just put in the middle of the fucking arc because they needed to ramp things up. They needed to say, oh, Naruto was the chosen one. He's the promised child. He's the guy who will save the world. Where in Naruto, the original anime, was Naruto supposed to have been the guy saving the world? At most, he was the guy who was supposed to save Sasuke. Okay? That was the thing. And it's very badly written because what they establish in Shippuden can be completely overwritten at any time at the behest of the writer. Okay? There are really no rules to Shippuden where there were a lot of rules in Naruto the original. And then let's just move on to another issue. And that's how Shippuden decided to use its filler. Naruto, the original anime, had a great use of filler because it famously had the 100 episodes of filler after Orochimaru's plan to take over the Leaf Village completely failed. And the filler was, it was fine. It was very hit and miss. They had some comedy filler episodes that were really funny, and they had some serious ones that were actually really good. Because basically what they did was they made Naruto do his actual job. The filler episodes were just him going on random missions, and those missions had self-contained plots that were, at least decent. They were good at some points. They were sometimes interesting. What Shippuden does with its filler is most of the time it just goes into flashbacks. It just goes into re-explaining things that we've already seen. There's a filler arc of Itachi flashbacks where, we're shown Itachi's childhood and how Itachi grew up to be, a good person, and how he became convinced that killing the Uchiha clan was, the way to go. And that's a bad thing for, a series that had previously established him to be a complete asshole to do. Especially when it's literally coming out of nowhere, like I've said. This wasn't in the original anime. There was no clues to this, that Itachi was actually a good person for the right reasons. Fucking stupid. There's even a filler episode where the entire episode is spent on Gaara re-explaining his friendship with Naruto and how that happened, simply because someone asked Gaara why Naruto was his friend. They burned through an entire episode on that. Honestly, what's even the stupider part is that a 20 episode long filler story was told that shown how Naruto could have made this anime actually better. When, at the end of the anime, when everyone gets transported to Tsukunomi worlds, which are basically dream worlds manifested through their brains, we get taken to one with Tsunade in it. And most of the Tsunade Tsukunomi world story is her reading a novel written by Jiraiya, her childhood friend, that is basically a shortened version of a different universe's version of the Shippuden anime that was actually better than what they were already doing. Because it was short, because it made sense, and because the characters were actually doing things that you could understand the reason behind. Okay, it was a simpler anime, sure, but at least it took you through the whole thing, and it ultimately made sense. Shippuden's kind of a lot like Kingdom Hearts. A lot of it doesn't really make sense, and it seems like a lot of the plot turns comes out of just things happening for no reason. I mean, the decision to, axe Madara as the ultimate antagonist and replace him with Kaguya, it really did make no sense, because it came right at the end of the anime for no reason, and it was just really stupid for Kaguya to have waited that long to make her move, because it was prophesized to happen for some reason. And it really does show off how God Particle bullshit the anime was. Honestly, Shippuden's strong point was probably in the stories it was telling during the war. That's where Shippuden's writing style really made more sense for it to be in. A very long drawn out and very multiple character focused, multiple perspective needed confrontation. Now, Shippuden shined during when it was telling of the Fourth Great Ninja War, but in everything else, not even close. You know, it's adding new things that don't need to be there. It's wasting time on characters and flashbacks that we don't need at all. And this is an anime that's shorter than One Piece, who has been doing great. I mean, in contrast, we're nearing the end of the One Piece anime as it stands, and the story that they're telling on Dressrosa is 100 episodes long, and it doesn't fall down in quality. Now, there are things that are always happening, and it's always interesting. Here, we're getting explained so much stuff and getting re-explained so much other stuff in Shippuden that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times we have to be told Sasuke hates the Leaf Village, how many times he wants revenge, how many times that Itachi was apparently a good person. It's a very badly written and a very insulting anime to someone who loved the original Naruto thick and thin. There was no thin in Naruto, the original. There's a lot of thin in Shippuden. And when you're making a sequel to something and you end up going in completely the other direction of why people liked the original, don't be surprised when people don't like it. You know, I've heard a lot of people defend Shippuden on the fact that, you know, it's very done so to show the maturation of Naruto and how he should be the promised child and the guy who saves the world. But that's not why the original was good, okay? There was no sign in Naruto, the original, that he was the guy who has saved the world. I mean, he was a guy who was persuasive, and he was able to draw a lot of people to him, but he wasn't fucking saving the world. Okay, that's not a thing that was happening. You put that in there because you want it to be Star Wars. You want it to be forced to be the great person. Because you needed a world domination plot, because you fell into that goddamn God particle bullshit Japanese trope trap, where you need to keep ramping up threats in order to make everything still feel threatening. That didn't need to be there. You know, Madara could have been a simple villain. Madara could have been the ultimate villain with a simple philosophy around it. We don't need this hierarchy of villains and these betrayals and these retcons. Okay, we don't need a series to be so many retcons that it's ridiculous. Okay, but what do I care? Shippuden's technically ending, but Naruto is never gonna end, because it's too much of a money spinner. It's just like One Piece, except Naruto planned to end. Okay, One Piece is an anime that really could just go on forever. There was no sign, even after 700 episodes, that it's going to end anytime soon. These things are money spinners. That's it. And it just shames me as a fan to see Shippuden and having watched 400 episodes of Shippuden, and it just pissed over everything that I've loved about the original. There's no underdog. There's no underdogs in it anymore. You know, these are all now prophesized people who have all the power they need and are just destined to win everything. And, you know, just an example, Naruto is destined to defeat Kaguya. It doesn't matter what she does, she is going to die. She is going to fail. When Naruto fought Neji, there was no guarantee that he was going to win. He won by the skin of his teeth and just being lucky. And that's why that fight is really entertaining, because it had a point to tell, because it had characters interacting, because it had something to say, and it was very interesting because, you know, it showed off Naruto's underdogness. He'd achieved something. Naruto himself doesn't achieve anything in Shippuden. He's been prophesized to win. He's destined to win. He himself, he's not gonna make this happen. The destiny is, and that's why destiny stories are bullshit, and they shouldn't have been put in Shippuden. Shippuden is a very badly written, retcon-based, stupid anime that pisses over the original in almost every way. It's a very dumb sequel, and it's just very sad to see it follow something that was so great, that was so very interesting. And now I've made myself sad at the end of this video. I mean, I'll be watching the rest of One Piece and fucking loving the Dressrosa story because it is so amazing. I mean, I forget the specific episode number because there are so many, but I think it was episode 677, where Kyros beheads Dom Flamingo, was literally the most perfect episode of that fucking series I've ever seen. It was literally perfect. And that's why One Piece is gonna be the anime I love, while Naruto is just the sad anime that couldn't make it to the finish line. I mean, if you're gonna watch Naruto, just stop at, you know, before it turns to Shippuden because it's just a big disappointment. It's taking too long, it's adding too many things that don't matter, it's wasting too much time on regurgitating footage that we don't need to see again. But anyway, this was Bosscinerator, and one thing, do not expect a lot of anime-based videos in the future. You know, that's not what my channel is about, and I really just did this because I was a fan. But anyway, this has been Bosscinerator, and I hope you guys a victory for gamers, and thank you for sticking with me throughout this half hour of pissing on Shippuden. Thanks for sticking around.